New details tonight about the timeline of events in the Murdaugh double murder case in South Carolina, in which a prominent former lawyer and father of two stands accused of killing his wife and one of his sons. Senior correspondent Laura Ingle has the latest on the timing of the all-important 911 call.
Okay, and sir, give me the address again.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now.
Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel.
Sir, I want to let you know, because of the scene, I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle? Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir. It's leaning up against the side of my car.
Okay. You're fine, man. You're fine. Turn around for me.
I don't have any guns.
Okay. Yes, sir. I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son?
And son.
Okay.
Let's get started on the case. In June 2021, Alex Murdaugh called 911 and said he had discovered the dead bodies of his wife and son at the family's remote hunting lodge in Islandton, South Carolina. What seemed to be a tragic double murder quickly turned into a web of lies, deception, and dead ends for investigators as false leads and shifting stories misled the police. The truth remained buried and hidden behind a veil of manipulation. Who was responsible for this horrible crime? And what sinister secrets were they concealing? The voice on the other end was that of Alex Murdaugh, a famous lawyer with a strong family history. His words were hurried with shock and terror, and he said that his wife Maggie and their son Paul had suffered a horrible loss.
Okay, is he breathing at all?
No.
Do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
When the 911 operator heard Alex's distress, they immediately summoned emergency personnel to the Murdaugh estate, which was a large property in Islandton, South Carolina, named Moselle.
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that's what they're gonna do, okay?
What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are. Yes, sir.
Even though the call was short, it would start a chain of events that not only split the family, but also exposed financial crimes and lies that no one could have foreseen before the killings. A well-known figure in South Carolina's Low Country, Alex Murdaugh was renowned for his wealth and power. His family had served as solicitors, a position akin to that of a district attorney, for more than 80 years, making them one of the state's most influential legal families. Alex went on to become a respected lawyer at the firm. He developed a reputation for being talented, driven, and influential while working on high-profile cases that cemented his position at Peters Murdaugh, Parker Eltzroth, and Dietrich, a company that is firmly ingrained in the region's judicial system. Alex married a former teacher who had been his high school love, and the two of them had 2 kids. When law enforcement arrived at the Murdaugh estate that night, they were met with an unthinkable scene. Alex Murdaugh had led them to the dog kennels near the house where both Maggie and Paul's bodies were discovered. From the outside, Buster and Paul appeared to be the ideal family, with a beautiful home, a powerful legacy, and a strong community standing. However, beneath the surface, Alex's personal and financial life was far from flawless, and cracks were beginning to form in the family's seemingly perfect life.
Paladin County Sheriff's Office Deputy Daniel Green was the first to arrive on the scene at Moselle.
Got a Whiskey Fox, Whiskey Mike, both gunshot wounds to the head.
Maggie and Paul are clearly dead. He sees Alec Murdaugh standing there as well in a t-shirt and shorts.
It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes.
He seems anxious. He seems distraught.
Paul Murdaugh, 22, was found laying on the ground with several gunshot wounds all over his body. He had been shot several times with a shotgun, and his mother had been wounded several times with a rifle. Both of them had been shot several times in the head, wrists, and chest with various weapons. The killing's violent character indicated a high degree of savagery, and it soon became evident that this was no coincidence. As he stood by the bodies of his wife and son, whom he claimed to have recently discovered, Alex Murdaugh's anguish appeared real. On June 7, 2021, before the murders occurred, Alex Murdaugh called his wife and asked her to meet him at their family hunting lodge in Islington. He claimed they were going to visit his terminally ill father before departing. When he returned to the estate, he claimed to have visited his mother in Almeida, a town about 20 minutes away, after learning she had become ill. At first glance, Alex seemed to be the victim of a tragic and senseless crime. But as investigators pieced together the events of that night, they would soon realize that this was not a straightforward case of random violence. In the hours after the bodies were discovered, investigators started talking to Alex and gathering evidence. At first, there was nothing to suggest foul play on Alex's part. His behavior seemed appropriately distressed, and there was no obvious motive to suggest that he had any involvement in the deaths of his wife and son. Maggie texted a friend that Alex sounded fishy and was up to something. After arriving, she discovered their son in the dog kennels.
Like when I came back here, I pulled up and I could see him, and, I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was.
But as the case progressed, detectives found alarming contradictions in Alex Murdaugh's account of what happened. The first significant red flag was surveillance footage taken from the Murdaugh property. A video taken from Paul's cell phone minutes before the murders showed Alex at the scene, directly contradicting his claim that he had been at his mother's house when the killings occurred. This evidence immediately called into question his alibi, and law enforcement immediately started to focus on him as a suspect. Additional investigation into Alex's cell phone records added to the growing suspicion, revealing that Alex had been on the Moselle property for a longer period of time than he had admitted, further suggesting he had been there before the murders occurred. His version of events was rapidly unraveling, which prompted authorities to re-examine every aspect of his story. As they dug deeper, they found a pattern of deception in Alex's past, a number of financial irregularities and personal conflicts that pointed to a much darker and more intricate web of crimes. What started out as a murder probe swiftly grew into something far more extensive and involved financial fraud, corruption, and a number of other concerning secrets. The more detectives learnt about Alex Murdaugh's life, the more horrifying it got. Alex had been part of a long-running operation to embezzle millions of dollars from his law firm's clients, which had continued for years without anybody noticing. The extent of Alex's financial difficulties was extensive. On the surface, he seemed to be a well-to-do and well-respected individual, but behind closed doors, he was drowning in debt and criminal activity. The most important of these revelations occurred when it was found that Alex had stolen money from his own clients, including the family of a deceased housekeeper named Gloria Satterfield. Alex used his influential position in the community to conceal his crimes. As more details about Alex's financial crimes emerged, it became evident that the murders of Maggie and Paul may have been connected to his desperate attempt to hide his financial wrongdoings. However, the more the investigation went on, the more it became clear that Alex's behavior was far more disturbing than anyone had initially suspected, and that Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes shocked the public. Gloria had worked for the Murdaugh family for years, and her death in 2018 under mysterious circumstances had already raised suspicions. The situation in 2019 was further complicated by the darker aspects of his son's past. Mallory Beach, 19, lost her life in a horrific boating accident in which Paul was involved.
Where's your emergency?
We're in a boat crash on Archer Creek. There's 6 of us and 1 is missing.
Okay, who's missing?
Female Mallory Beach is missing.
Paul smashed the boat after operating it while inebriated. Everyone on board was thrown into the sea after the vessel collided with a bridge. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Mallory Beach sadly drowned, and the occurrence sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. Even though Paul was charged with 3 crimes related to Mallory's death, his family's wealth and influence appeared to shield him from any real legal repercussions. The case never ended, and no conviction was ever rendered, which raised suspicions that the Murdaugh family's power was interfering with justice, and the legal proceedings dragged on with little progress for many. As the investigation into Maggie and Paul's murders continued, people in the community began to ask difficult questions, such as whether Paul's death was a form of retaliation for the family's history of manipulating the legal system, whether the Murdaugh family's long-standing privilege created enemies, and whether that contributed to the gruesome killings. Just when it appeared that Alex Murdaugh's world couldn't get any more complicated, detectives continued to consider the possibility that the killings might be related to the boating disaster, and were now examining whether the deaths were a retaliatory act connected to a previous catastrophe. Another shocking revelation was made in September 2021. Alex staged his own shooting in what seemed to be an unsuccessful attempt to plan his death. He hoped that his surviving son, Buster, would receive a sizable life insurance payout by making it appear as though the assassination had failed. Curtis Edward Smith, a guy with a criminal past and a former client of Alex's, was supposedly paid by Alex to kill him, but the plan backfired when Smith shot Alex but was unable to kill him. Alex initially claimed that the shooting was part of a random attack, but investigators soon realized that the situation was much more complicated than it seemed. The failed suicide attempt caused investigators to reconsider Alex's involvement in the murders. The gunshot only caused minor injuries, and Alex survived. Only a few months prior, his wife and son had been murdered.
Did Alex ever try to hire you as a hitman?
No.
Did you kill Maggie or Paul Murdaugh?
No.
When they went over the evidence from the previous case, they discovered alarming contradictions in Alex's words and deeds that seemed to point to his role in their murders. As the investigation progressed, it became evident that Alex had been desperate to get out of his financial difficulties, which was a major motivation behind both the murders and the staged shooting. These disparities cast serious doubt on his version of events and suggested that he may have been not only involved in the murders, but had also gone to great lengths to conceal them. Authorities started to believe that Alex had murdered Paul and Maggie as part of a bigger scheme to control his family's assets and get out of his growing debt. Investigators had to completely change their focus due to this new level of complexity in the case. It became evident that Alex had plotted the killings of his wife and kid, and even attempted to stage his own death to escape accountability, turning what had initially appeared to be a terrible family murder into a much larger tale of deception, manipulation, and criminal activity. Dick Harpootlian, Alex's defense attorney, made strong arguments that the investigation had been flawed from the start. He pointed out that the crime scene had been compromised by heavy rain, which may have washed away or destroyed potential evidence. He also highlighted the fact that police had failed to collect important forensic evidence from the scene. What's more concerning is that the Murdaugh's family members and friends were allowed to walk through the crime scene before it had been properly secured, potentially contaminating crucial evidence that affected the investigation. In October 2021, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division declared Alex Murdaugh a person of interest. This announcement was a significant turning point in the case because it was the first time law enforcement had publicly acknowledged their suspicions of Alex's involvement. Despite the criticism and the seeming poor handling of the crime scene, these problems created substantial concerns about the integrity of the initial investigation and whether important pieces of evidence had been missed or lost. The inquiry into Maggie and Paul Murdaugh's deaths went on. An important milestone in the case was the formal allegation and charging of Alex Murdaugh by a Colleton County grand jury in July 2022. This charge established that law enforcement had sufficient evidence to accuse Alex with the killings. The grand jury's verdict followed months of inquiry and examination, which included looking into Alex's financial transactions, potential motivations, and his behavior in the days preceding the killings in response to the accusations. Despite the charges, Alex Murdaugh maintained his innocence and entered a not guilty plea.
Richard Ellen Murdoch, that is your name. Please raise your right hand. Do you waive reading of the indictments?
Yes, sir.
What say you, Richard Ellen Murdoch? Are you guilty or not guilty of the felonies wherein you stand indicted?
Not guilty.
Prosecutors said that if Alex was found guilty, they would pursue life in prison without the prospect of release, but they chose not to pursue the death penalty. As the legal process progressed, the case gained even more significance due to the brutality of the murders and the larger context of Alex Murdaugh's life. On January 25, 2023, in Walterboro, South Carolina, Alex Murdaugh's trial began. The prosecution presented evidence of financial crimes of murder as a motive for the murders, and the defense argued to exclude this evidence, but was overruled. This decision demonstrated the seriousness of the charges, the high-profile nature of the case, and the evidence that suggested Alex's guilt. In his February 23rd testimony, Murdaugh acknowledged lying and stealing money, but he denied the murders. On March 2nd, 2023, a jury convicted him guilty of 2 murders and 2 crimes involving weapons. Murdaugh received a life sentence. In September 2023, his legal team filed an appeal, citing claims of wrongdoing and jury interference. Following his conviction on May 24, 2023, Murdaugh encountered more legal issues when he was charged with federal crimes in November 2023, including wire fraud and money laundering. Judge Jean H. Toll rejected the demand for a new trial after Murdaugh entered a guilty plea to 22 federal crimes and was given a 27-year prison sentence in January 2024. Murdaugh's lawyers persisted in their appeals, and the matter reached the South Carolina Supreme Court, which consented to review the ruling in August 2024. Following the federal sentencing, he was given a 40-year term for financial crimes on April 1, 2024. On August 13, 2024, the Supreme Court of South Carolina decided to reconsider the case in jail after Murdaugh was ordered to pay $8.7 million in reparations to his victims. As a wardkeeper assistant, Murdaugh has also been disciplined for abusing his privileges, which includes losing his phone and canteen privileges. And that's where we'll leave this case for now. What are your thoughts? Let's continue the conversation in the comments. If you found this video interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime content. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.